Okay, hi everybody. I'm Lizzie, and I am a Forest School Practitioner. I deliver Forest School sessions mainly in the Bradford area, Bradford district of West Yorkshire, and I'm primarily working in primary schools at the moment, delivering Forest School taster sessions to primary aged kids. In the past, I have delivered private sessions in Woodlands, but at the moment, schools are really keen to get kids out, and especially after everything that's happened with the pandemic, keen to get kids out and get them just connecting with nature and feeling good. So that's where I am today. I'm just been delivering a session to year twos, and they've just gone in for the dinner, so here I am.
Excellent, wonderful, thank you. So that actually leads us quite nicely into one of the questions that we were talking about in our session this morning. So I'm going to kick off with, this is a bit of a contentious one. What is it about Forest School ethos that you really like, and what are its benefits, do you think, compared to a standard classroom session?
Yeah, I think the ethos itself, you've got the 6 principles, and one of the principles that I really like is the way that it's holistic. So it's bringing in all aspects of learning and all aspects of well-being together. I think that's the one that I'm the most keen on, and the one that sits well with me, because it thinks about the ethos thinks about everything and considers everything for each learner. So for example, this morning with a group of children that I've had, they've all done something, every single child has done something differently, whether it's been creating something that has been a set activity and they have then taken it in their own direction. So I can plan a session and then they'll just say, oh, I want to do this instead. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. So
really
that's happened quite a bit this morning, and that's been really interesting. The member of staff that came out, I think she was quite shocked and surprised at how unique each child's experience was. So I think that's the main thing for me, is just that every child or every learner, whoever it is, can take it in the way that they want to, and whatever they need to get from the session.
That's really interesting, because we were just talking about this morning, about trying to tailor a session to every single child, learner, person, and that must be a really difficult thing to do in a classroom setting. Whereas when you take it outdoors to a forest school and follow those 6 principles of forest school, it makes it a lot easier to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I can relate to that, because as a practitioner, there can often feel a pressure to make sure that you're planning and you've got something for everything, and it can feel quite overwhelming. But I think if you use an outdoor space and the natural elements around you, there will always be a way. You don't need a massive amount of kit. More often than not, you can take a lot of kit and they won't use it. They'll go to the pile of sticks. So that's what I've had again this morning, is they've just been I've got a wealth of resources here, loads of natural resources, and they just go to that straight away each time. So that's good, as long as you've got a basic kit. Yep. It tends to be where they will just take it in their own direction.
Another question, and something that we've been talking about, is whether Forest School works. So we say Forest School is an informal form of education, whereas a school setting would be more formal because it's linked to outcomes, for example. So do you think it is actually possible to change the mindset of children who attend regular Forest School sessions? Do you think it is possible that you could empower them to make a change for the future? So for future generations, to protect the environment, essentially.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I think it's educating and inspiring and opening their eyes a little bit, in terms of, just capturing their imagination and capturing their attention. I think this morning, I'm just thinking of everything I've done this morning, and it's all relating to it. So thinking about, when we're saying to the children, looking after ourselves, looking after each other, and looking after the environment, at that point, majority of children will say, oh, we've got to look after nature, we've got to look after the insects, and we don't break sticks off the trees, and they'll come out with things like that. But seeing them doing it in practice is really interesting, because they don't always know how to do it, until they've probably done something they shouldn't have, and then they realise, they think, oh, you know, that's not what we need to do, we need to do this. So it is learning through some mistakes, but as we know, that's how we learn through making mistakes. And sometimes it can be a small one where they realise, you know, actually we need to look after nature. There was a worm in a puddle this morning, and all the children gathered round it and were trying to rescue this worm out of a puddle, and, you know, little things like that, which are really heartwarming, but it shows that they've got an interest in looking after the nature, which can lead on to other things. You know, you can build that up, can't you? So
I'm so
what can you see? You are so what? So
proud of
you're so proud. What are you proud of?
because I found these, because I wanted to find these.
It's a nice feeling proud, isn't it?
The big one's coming out.
It's taking his time. I think that snail might have been asleep for a long time.
Because maybe it might have been very tired.
You think he's been tired?
We just have to wait to come out.
Are there any barriers to your sessions? So do you feel like you're restricted in any way? And particularly now that you're working in schools a little bit more, do you feel like there are any barriers or any restrictions to your delivery?
Definitely. It can occur, barriers can definitely occur. So one thing that's been really interesting is the element of taking risk, and risk taking itself in terms of climbing trees. So I had a really interesting interaction with a member of staff last week. She came over quite upset and quite panicked that she could see a child in a tree. And I had to use a lot of strategies and a lot of ways to explain to her that that child was safe. I'd assessed their climbing. This child had done a lot of tree climbing at lots of different Forest School sessions. And it was really, I guess one of the barriers would be educating staff and getting staff on board and getting them to understand that a lot of the time it's adult fear that stops them from taking risks. When this child was really capable, you know, and he knew what his limit was. But it really interested me, the dynamics of knowing what to say to that member of staff to put them at ease. Because I had to acknowledge that she was panicked, and I acknowledged that, and then I explained it. And once she was aware of that and understood that I'd assessed it, she was a little bit more inclined to understand it, but she still didn't feel comfortable with it. So I think it is getting the staff on board to understand the benefits of it. And I think once they're able to experience that for themselves, then they can say, actually, yeah, it is a good thing to do.
That's so interesting. We've been having a debate about this morning, exactly the same thing, about saying that when we're talking about environmental education, Forest School, whatever it might be, there's an awful lot of, I suppose, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of responsibility on the facilitator to do a good job. And if you've got a facilitator who may be risk averse, for example, or want to get a bit more involved or not have that much idea or passion for the environment, then maybe the session isn't going to go as best it could do. So do you think that the facilitator does have a massive impact and a massive part to play in the success of a Forest School session or programme?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think as a practitioner, I can see over the years where I've not, well, yeah, made mistakes and, you know, possibly done things differently and learned from them, and realised how maybe my delivery could have limited things, maybe, you know, how maybe just understanding that if I was to become more confident in delivering something, so like the tree climbing, when I first was learning how to be a practitioner and what to do, you know, I might not have done that. I might have gone, oh yeah, come down, that's it, we won't do it, you know. So yeah, I think it does depend on experience, and it does depend on the confidence and the you know, the knowledge, I guess. I think you have to build your knowledge as a practitioner. You have to build your awareness of what's around you, and your risk assessing of trees, and knowing if it's safe. So yeah, I think it's down to the practitioner to extend their knowledge and get those different experiences in different settings.
Yeah.
I think if I hadn't started my Forest School journey in the way that I did, which was starting in a not in a school setting, as you know, Lucy, in an open woodland, with a lot of risks that were potential hazards. You know, there was a river there, there was lots of rocks there were lots of trees to climb and lots of banks. So I think I did go in with a lot of instant experience. And everybody was safe, everyone was fine, and it was all okay. But as an initial thing, I think I did go in, quite
End.
So I think it does. I think it's all those experiences that you build as a practitioner that lead you to that state of, actually, this is okay, we're safe, we've assessed that risk. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Lots of screaming in the background.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. It doesn't matter. It makes it authentic. You're actually on time. Okay, so our students we're throwing them in at the deep end. Now, they don't have to deliver a Forest School session. They've got to deliver a session that embeds education for sustainability, which is similar to Forest School, but they can do it in any way they choose. So they're going to be given a group of primary school age children, about aged 8, and they're going to be working outside, and they've got about an hour to deliver it. They've never some of them have done a little bit of educational stuff before, some of them haven't. They're obviously feeling quite anxious about this. Where would you start with planning your session? So if this was your first session, what would you advise them to do to start with?
I would say you need an initial getting to know you activity. So you need something where you get in the group together and you're just assessing what their abilities are in terms of how they are in the group, how they interact with each other. Something where you are trying to assess, what's their listening skills like? Are they able to listen to what you're telling them? And from that, it would then lead on to what you can deliver, basically. So there's a lot of thinking on your feet needed, and having quite a few things in your toolkit that you can say, well, that's a lovely activity to do, but I don't think we're quite ready for that. I think we need to wait until we've built up, an idea of what they can manage as a group. So something where you're getting to know each other. We did something this morning, which was a simple just activity where they're sat in the circle, and I asked them to think of a Forest School name, or it could be a nature name. So it would be their name, followed by something in nature that begins with the same letter. So, for example, mine's Lizzie Ladybird. From that, you can sort of get to grips with, are they confident in the group? Are they able to talk in front of others? And then I'm then asking them to share a couple of facts about themselves. What do they like? What do they not like? And that generally gives you an idea of the dynamics in the group and who feels confident and what you can deliver, basically.
To go have a look at it later. Okay, Abigail, this is the plan. Okay, the plan is we're going to do a little bit of talking and some listening. We're going to find out how we're going to stay safe and have a good time.
And I can hear the birds squeak.
And after that, so first we're going to do a bit of talking and listening. Next, we're going to do a little bit of an activity, okay? And then you're going to choose whatever you would like to do, okay? Excellent. Okay, so my name is Lizzie Ladybird. And let's find out your names. Who feels brave that we can tell them? Wow, guys, well done. Miss, where should we start? What do you think?
Oh, shall we start here?
Hello, Bella. Hello. How are you today? Good. Excellent. A thumbs up. Good. Excellent. Bella, tell me something about you. What do you like?
Chocolate.
Oh! Wonderful. Brilliant. Thank you, Bella. Yes.
I got Jack.
Hello, Jack. How are you today?
Yeah.
Good. What do you like, Jack? Dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jack. Hello. What's your name? Hello, Lucy. What do you like, Lucy? Playing. Oh, fantastic. We've got lots of swings out to play on today. We've got 3 actually. Lovely. Thank you, Matthias. Hello. You've waited a long time. Abigail, you've waited ages. Well done. And how are you today? Sad. Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. We will have lots of fun today, okay? And before you know it, it will be time to move on to another thing.
Yes, that's exactly right. You are right, Abigail. We'll have lunch when we're finished in the forest, don't you worry.
Thank you, Abigail. Yeah, we're going to do exploring today. Let's see if we can find some snails. So do I. Okay, sorry, I've just distracted Abigail. Abigail, I'm really sorry. We've not asked you what you like. Yeah. Eddie Teddy. Does Eddie Teddy give you lots of cuddles? Good. Thank you, Abigail.
Engaging or pinching each other or whatever. What would your advice be on trying to keep a group engaged?
It's knowing your group, I think. It's knowing, you know, again, I'm going to go on about the dynamics of the group. It's knowing if you have got, I've got a couple of children in the group this morning that I need to keep engaged, and I will give them a job to do, or I will give them a responsibility. Can you come and hold this? Can you come and, you know, can you light this fire? Can you get this started? And it's like, whoa, you know, that responsibility. So I think it's just knowing, recognizing which ones might need either a responsibility or a job to do, and just having, if you've got another member of staff or another adult with you that you can bounce off and say, oh, I don't know, Mrs. Smith, have you noticed how this child's doing, you know, and just sharing it with the staff member across the group. I've noticed that Sam is listening really well there, you know, and once you use that as an example, the others are all like, oh. So use that as an example and recognise and acknowledge what they're doing. Yes. I can see that you're all really listening right now. That's great. Well done. Yeah. I can see that you are. And just observe it and recognise that they're doing something. That's the strategy that I use quite a bit. That's good. Because all the others sort of like following then, you know. Yeah,
that's good. I like that. And I find that challenging to you're almost kind of verbalizing what's going on in your head because you've recognized it in your head, but then you've got to say it out.
It sounds a bit unnatural. It feels like when you're saying it, you think when you first do it, you're like, this sounds weird. Yeah. But it's amazing. It's an amazing little strategy to use, because the more you are verbal with your acknowledgement of what's going on, the more aware the group are of what they're doing.
Yeah. It's all good. Okay. I am looking for 2 different leaves. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go for an explore and find 2 leaves that look different, that are not the same, and bring them over here and put them on here. Let's have a little look. Hello, Abigail. Come on, put your muddy hands on mine. Wait. Wonderful. Pop them on here, Mel. Brilliant. Come on, put careful. Well done, Abigail. Pop them on here. Okay. Lovely. Oh, Miss, I like that one.
Yes.
Oh, we're nearly there. We just want to talk about these leaves, don't we?
It's actually a fire on Piper.
Right, guys, let's get around and have a look at our leaves. Oh, Matthias.
Hello.
Wow.
I'm just hanging. My clip was saying. Would you like me to do it? I'll do your clip. I know what. My dad put them on. Oh, Daddy's so sensible, isn't he?
Somebody's found the mud.
Uh-oh.
Come on, let's go. They're ready to go, aren't they? Let's go. They're ready to go.
Well
done.
No, Bella, I've just realised I've got the matching leaves to use at home, but they're just a bit bigger.
So these guys are ready to go and explore now. So off they go.
I've got a couple of questions for you. So the first one is, as a Forest School practitioner and somebody who does have to plan lessons for various different age groups, etc., is there anything that you have in your facilitator's toolkit that you think is really important? So students are going to have to deliver a session, they're going to have a plan, but as we know, for people as an educator, you tend to sometimes have to wing it, for want of a better word. And have you got something just in your toolkit, like your metaphorical bum bag almost?
So things like sticky labels are really handy to have. If you're struggling to remember names, you can just write a name and just plonk it on them, or give it to them and they'll put it on. Yeah. And then I also have something to make a sound. So it might be like a little bell or whistles, but whistles can be a bit of a shock. So I would just be wary of whistles for some children. They find those a bit alarming. I have something like a little a gentle little bell, 2 little bells that go together, and it's just to sort of ground the moment and just to gather attention. So that's another good one you could do. You could have like 2 sticks, something to bash together, and it's just to gather attention and to settle the group so that they're aware of your presence. That's something that I like to do sometimes. In terms of materials, I tend to have log discs and pens so that they can write, they can decorate it. This is a really nice tactile activity to do. If we've got a bow saw and some wood as well, we can cut our own. That's really nice, so they can take part in that. But this is a really nice activity just to decorate and personalise. And then if they want to hang it up in the woods, we can drill a little hole into it. If they want to hang it up in the woods, they can, or they can take it home. And that's generally a good go-to activity. But the other thing that we've been doing is we've been using fabric. So I collect a lot of scrap materials. I go to charity shops and recycle fabric. So it might be like an old pillowcase or a duvet cover, and I chop them up. The kids cut them into squares and decorate the fabric, and then attach it to a stick to make a little flag. And that's a really nice activity to do. And I've actually had a class of children do that today, all off their own back. They saw a flag of mine in the woods, and they said, "Oh, I want to make my own flag," and they just did that. Somebody got a birthday flag, which I thought was pretty cool. Those are good.
Amazing.
Like as an emoji check-in. I do the thumbs because it's easier. So it's one less thing to carry. Yeah. But I have times where like the children need something visual, and visual stuff, things that are physical they can see, can be a lot more easy to understand than just words, which can get lost.
If there's a situation whereby they need to check in, how do you go about that when they're all active and engaged in something, but you know that you need to do a bit of a check-in? How do you know when it's an appropriate time to do that, and what sort of techniques do you use?
I would tend to just go one-on-one. So I would just check in with the children on their own, one-to-one, rather than doing it as a big group, because I think it can break off that flow. So I think if you sort of just want to see how it's going, I just tend to just pull up to one side. How's it going? Is there anything you need? Or I can see that you're enjoying that. Is there anything else you need, to help with that? And I just tend to go around and just pick a few that I think, if someone's a bit quiet or if somebody's struggling, and trying to just do it on a one-on-one basis. If I was to not do it the other way and do it as a group check-in, I'd be really mindful and careful of what moment to pick. So if everybody was in one place, that would be easier. But obviously, if everybody's off doing things in different places, it might be harder to do that. Sometimes what I do is I might use a strategy called 1, 2, 3, where are you? And if I shout 1, 2, 3, where are you? They shout 1, 2, 3, we're here. And then I say 3, 2, 1, back to base, and they come back to me. That's a really good one if you do need to get everybody in, and you do need to sort of reboot where you are and see what's going on. Yeah. So there's a few little things there that you can do. I think it's just judging the needs of the group really, and seeing if there is a bit of a flow state going on, because if they're right in the middle of it and we're stopping just for us, it can be quite, you know.
Yeah, and
it
it's
can be quite
hard as well. It's hard to take that step back and acknowledge that flow state is happening sometimes, isn't it? As a facilitator, and taking control and going, well, I'm not comfortable with this situation. I want to speak to everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
That actually isn't about you.
No, it isn't, and that's definitely something I've learned through my work as a practitioner, is that I may want to hear what's going on and how they're feeling and at that moment, but they're probably not going to want to tell me because they're right in the middle of doing something. And I think probably on that point, just something I want to mention at that point is, I think something that actually I reflected on today was that I noticed during the session that children didn't, to somebody who's teaching, a teacher from the school, they might have taken a glance around and thought, well, they're not really doing much. Don't underestimate the natural flow of what children are doing when they're outdoors and when they're learning outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you said, Lucy, take a step back and just observe right around and see what that child is doing and what they are learning, mm-hmm. because it may look really simple and really small, but to them it'll be really big. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a lot of things going on in outdoor learning where that happens a lot, and I think sometimes that's something that's hard to measure,
especially from an adult perspective. As we were talking about the paper that we were reading and discussing this morning, we can't judge what's going on in that child's mind or what they're processing at that time, because we're not that child and we're not processing it. We're seeing it from an adult perspective, and we've got we can't judge, can we?
Yeah, and definitely, absolutely, totally agree. And I think it's something that's brilliant about Forest School, and I'm obviously an advocate for it because I love it and it's what I do for a job, but I think something that I am really passionate about is that freedom for those children to choose and the freedom for them to access it at their own level. So we had a boy recently who, when he came out, the learning support assistant, or the teaching assistant should I say, came out and she said, there's one boy there, you won't get anything out of him. He won't do anything. I was like, okay, that's fine, thanks for letting me know, that's good to know, good to be aware of. And I know when there is a child like that who doesn't necessarily thrive in the classroom situation, as soon as they come outside, that's where they will thrive and that's where they need to be. So this young boy came out, and the first thing he did was he looked straight down and he looked at his feet, and he was sort of stabbing the ground with a stick. All the other children were engaging with me with eye contact, and this young boy was just looking straight down. He was just fascinated by this worm. And I remember the teaching assistant going, put it down, put the worm down. I was like, he's all right, he's fine, he's okay, just let him look at the worm, he's okay. And the other children were off, they went off and did stuff, and this boy just sat there the whole time looking at this worm. And then he came over and sat next to me, and he just went, I don't know what to do. And I said, that's okay, you don't just go and see what you want, see what you like, see what interests you. And I had a little box of cocktail sticks for making things with. Sometimes it's a good like tactile thing to use, and I just got a cocktail stick and just shoved it into this log, this like sort of a bit of a rotten log that was just there, and I shoved it in, and he just watched me doing it, and he picked up the box of cocktail sticks and just made a sculpture of this. It was incredible. And then he was able to tell me all about it, and the teaching assistant came over and she was crying. She said, that boy never speaks.
Do you think there would have been an opportunity for that to happen in a classroom setting, in a formal education setting?
Not like that. I think it would have been very, very structured, and you are going to make a family of sticks and you are going to decorate it. Mm-hmm. And because I modelled it, but I didn't say anything. I didn't say, you're going to do it. I just went, oh, look at that stick in that log. That looks funny. Mm-hmm. Oh, and it gave him the confidence. Mm-hmm. So no, I think that freedom, because he could have easily just got up and walked away, and it would have been fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And the power of, so a lot of people, you just said before, taking a step back, and a lot of teachers, teaching assistants, people who maybe don't have a deep understanding of the Forest School ethos or the informal learning experience, would maybe think, well, what's that child learned from sticking a stick in a log? But actually, when you break it down and you disseminate that, it isn't just about learning to stick a stick in a log. There's so much. There's a much bigger picture that we're understanding. And I think it's important for the students to understand when they go into that school setting and they're delivering the sessions, that actually the small things sometimes are the most important.
You've got the verbal, you've got the literacy, you know, you've got counting all the spikes out onto the, you know, masses, and then the empathy that this is the family and this is how he feels and that's how they feel. And
and he's engaged with nature, which is what our module is all about, that we're delivering, which is education for sustainability. All of those other things have happened and they've been embedded, which is great, and it's very holistic. But also he's engaged with nature, and that might be the first time that boy has ever engaged with nature, and that could just spark something. And we were talking today about it, you might only affect one child or one individual during a session or a program or a year long, whatever it might be, but actually that could be that session and that moment could have been really important for him to then I don't know make a change,
believe in himself for one thing, and then that self-esteem and that belief, for them to have the confidence to say, this is what I'm interested in, you know.
Absolutely.
I like worms and I want to make a wormery.
You
know, anything. But, you know, it's harnessing and holding on to those interests and being able to acknowledge that to the child, you know, the learner, and just say, yeah, well done, it, you know, that's, you know, that, and it can lead on then.
Sophie's saying hello to you. Hello.
What are the key elements that you include in your planning, sort of from start to finish?
So one thing I always try and make sure that I get in place is my timings. So I always make sure that I've got a starter activity to, you know, to welcome them in, get the session warmed up, so getting to know each other, so it'll be knowing each other's names, and then doing some sort of warm-up game. So I've got a beginning bit, then I've got a core activity time where they can choose, or I've got something planned that I want to achieve, whether it be digging over a raised bed, or I want to make sure that they learn how to do some firelighting this week, and then they can go choose. And at the end, making sure that I've got my my reflection time, so everybody coming together, and then just the practical stuff like actually getting the kit back in and things like that. So timings is a really important one on the plan. And I always try and make sure as well that I include spices, and again the practical side of it, making sure what kit, so making a note of all the kit. You've got a first aid kit, you know, you've got your activities, anything that you need, and it's just a really good, it's a prompt sheet. I recognise it as a prompt sheet for me, and I return to it now and again. I go through phases. I go through phases of writing plans down, and then I go through phases of having plans up here, and it varies how much I do plan.
I just wondered if you could share how you assess risks before, during and after your sessions.
Yeah, that's no problem. So when I arrive on site, so the things that I'm looking for, obviously the weather is the first thing. So the weather will define whether or not the session goes ahead. If it's high winds, if it's thundering, those are the two main things that will determine whether or not the session goes ahead. Tree damage, so any branches, any dead wood, anything that's around that I need to check. The other one is glass, litter and dog poo. And a lot of the time, if there is a lot of broken glass, if I can't pick it up, I will make a section out of bounds. It's just this, unfortunately, the world that we live in, sometimes there is a lot of litter and glass. During the actual session itself, I will be assessing things like the children's tree climbing, children's use of swings and hammocks, and I'll be getting them to assess the risk as well, not just me. Yeah. So getting them to stop and have a look at the branch that they've put the swing on. Often they'll say, "Oh, I want to put a swing up here," and we have a conversation about the fact that the branch needs to be, you know, relatively thick and wide and sturdy. And then a lot of the time we may just choose the branch that they say, and I'll put the rope over, I'll help them put it over, and then we just pull on it and we try and see the impact it has on the branch itself, and getting them just to assess it and see that the impact it's having, what's the possible risk, what might that do to the tree. At the end, just making sure that we've left no trace, and we've made sure that we've packed things away, not left any ropes out or anything that might harm anything in nature or any, you know, risk to anybody else. Making sure that everything litter has been taken away. I always make sure I've got a bag and a hoop so that kids can, and litter pickers as well, because it's amazing, the children do have interest in picking up litter and removing it, and we do have children doing litter picks. I never enforce it, but if they want to do it, they can. It's like you say, it is a constant dynamic risk assessment. You are always sort of looking around, and you do get into that flow of that's the pattern and that's the behaviour and the mentality that you need. And it does help when you educate the children, because you're a team doing it together then. So as a Forest School practitioner, a self-employed Forest School practitioner, do you also have your own risk assessments that you have like in a file somewhere for specific activities, and they need to be updated regularly as well as you bring in new activities to your Yes, definitely. So I have like you say, a bunch of different ones for different things. So firelighting, tools, wild art, off-ground risk assessment, anything that's going to be off the ground, like a welfare and travel. So if you are going to be moving around if you are going to a woodland and you're travelling, how are you going to travel safely? And they all need to be updated annually. And like, obviously, if you are going to bring something in new, make sure you add it. I always make sure I add it to my risk assessment. So it might be, like, I've just bought a slack line that can go, like a balance slack line that can go between two trees. So it's making sure that there's an assessed risk on that, and what, you know, how to use it correctly.
My risk assessments. Have you ever had anything come back where the teachers have been a bit more risk averse and gone, can't believe you're lighting fires on school sites, or we don't have tree climbing here, or something
Definitely.
Like that?
Yeah, I've definitely come across it recently with tree climbing. It's something that adults generally are quite fearful of. And I think, again, it's what we were saying earlier about standing back and letting things happen, and that doesn't sound as bad as it that isn't as bad as it sounds. It's, you know, observing it, looking, are they being really dangerous, or are they exploring? You know, I always put a height limit on tree climbing, so it's climbing as tall, as high as Lizzie can reach, so the tallest adult can reach. But yeah, definitely adults, I have come across adults that are really scared, genuinely frightened that bad's going to happen. And I think it is totally healthy and totally normal to be nervous about something like that. I think it would be terrible if somebody wasn't bothered. But it's managing it and it's balancing it. And it is that, again, it's going back to the risk benefit of, why is that child wanting to climb a tree? What are they going to get from it? And you know, what's the benefit and what's the risk? And it's getting that equal balance, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I like a risk benefit analysis, and we don't actually have to do one, but I think it would be good and useful for all facilitators to sort of have that risk benefit analysis just there, because it's important, because sometimes there is a bit of a cost or there is a bit of a risk, but the benefit can outweigh that. Absolutely. And as long as it's managed appropriately. But I understand, and I think going into the school environment of that formal education, with working with teachers and learning support assistants that may not have a Forest School background, or are a little bit more risk averse, it can cause create a bit of a barrier potentially.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's all about that relationship building with the member of staff. So I always ensure when I go into a school that whichever member of staff I'm working with, I try and quickly build a rapport with them, and try and get a gauge of how they're feeling about it. You know, do you have any questions? Is there anything you want to ask or anything you're not sure about? And it's giving them that opportunity to say, well, actually, yeah, I'm not a fan of tree climbing, and I really don't. I'm not keen on it. Okay, I understand. We are going to do some tree climbing, but this is how it's going to be safe. And we're going to explain it all from beginning to end to the children how we're going to do it. And the children are fine with that because they know that we're trying to keep them safe. I think where it becomes an issue and a chore is when it's you will not do this and you will not do that. I think as long as it's balanced with, yeah, you can tree climb, and they're like, yes. A lot of children will say, you know, don't do this, don't do that. And I say, well, let's reframe it. What can we do? And they're like, oh, wow. So I had an incident a couple of weeks ago using a potato peeler. So a lot of the time in my sessions, I use peelers way before knives. More often than not, I use peelers because it is a quick, easy thing to explain. But it also helps them to understand and gain a respect of a tool and understand how to use a tool before using a knife. So it's a starter tool, effectively. I had explained, done a safety talk with the children about peelers, how you always peel away, never towards and never straight down towards your hand. Safety talk was dealt with. The children listened really well. And unfortunately, a child did peel in the wrong direction and they did cut into their thumb. And as a practitioner, that can be a really frightening moment because you know that child has injured themselves. It's because of something that you've brought in. But I had to do a lot of self-talk that day because I knew that those children had had an opportunity to take a risk. Something had happened. They'd cut the finger. Yes, it wasn't nice, but you know, they'd learned from that mistake they'd made. And as a practitioner going into a school, it is always a worry when you've got to go back to the school, to the head teacher and say, oh, one of your children has cut themselves. You know, it can be a bit nerve-wracking. And the head teacher was amazing. She just said, Lizzie, that's why you're here. You're here to teach the children how to take risks. Accidents will happen. This child needs to be more careful. That's what this child's learned.
Okay, right guys, before we go and explore, how are we going to stay safe in the woods? What do we need to look out for? Matthias? Look out for the teddies, we're going to go look for those, aren't we? Yeah. What do we need to look for so that we don't hurt ourselves? Yeah. Wolves? You might hear a wolf later on. What else might we need? Bella? What? I'm thinking of something. I'm thinking of something that's on the ground. When we're walking around the woodland, I'm thinking of something that will be on the ground that we need to take care with. We need to look after snails, definitely.
Like a worm.
Tell you what, just look, stay where you are. Just look over here behind Lucy. What's this here? Why is that? Why has that got red wool around it? Matthias, why has that got red, can't say that, red wool around it? Right, okay, let me show you something else. If we get there, we'll get there. I'm walking through the woods.
Where are you walking?
What happened? So we need to look where we are walking, and this has got, there's a bit of a story behind this, There's a bit of a story. I put this red wool around this yesterday.
I can imagine.
Right? Been coming to this school for a few weeks now. And I've tripped over this little stump every single day I've been here. So that's probably about 20 times. And yesterday when I tripped over it, I thought, that's it, enough is enough. I'm going to put some red wool around that. So I don't trip over it, and I did trip over it yesterday. So we to use our looking skills so that we don't trip. Okay, thank you, Jack. So we don't trip over. Well done. What else are we going to look after? What are we going to look after? Yes. Look after worms. Okay, yes, slugs. So we are going to look after nature. Nature. Anything in nature. You love nature, don't you? Okay, hands down. Right, before we go, last thing. Oh, what's that?
I know.
Bella, you've got your hand up. Nettles. Bella, well done. Why am I holding nettles like this? Why am I not just holding it with my hand?
Because it might sting you.
It might sting you. So, we are going to go look for some leaves now. Okay.
I love it.
When you are going to look for your leaves, I'm just going to come round and show you. Sit down, Jack. Have a look at that. Okay, this is a nettle. Look at the leaves. They're all spiky. Okay, there's nothing to be scared of, but you just have to take care. Make sure you don't touch them. Okay. I love nettles. You can eat nettles. You can eat nettle. You can have nettle tea.
You've got to be careful not to touch
You can
them.
have nettle soup, but you must make sure that when you are collecting leaves that you avoid. That means you don't touch these ones.
And some of the career opportunities that these students might be going into, and I don't actually know if this group will be or not, but they might be going into education rangering. So that kind of thing. So taking on school groups, maybe just on a one-off around a wildlife or nature reserve or something like that. And they're going to have to deal with those teachers, and they're going to have to deal with the head teacher, and they're going to have to forward the risk assessments in advance. And I think it's hard to know on a one-off basis how a teacher is going to respond to your delivery style when they don't know you, and they're never going to come back, or they might come back the following year, and that is building rapport. But your delivery style has got to meet lots and lots of needs, hasn't it? Especially if you're just seeing them once. You've got a class of 30, 5 teachers and a head teacher that you're liaising with that's never met you.
Yeah.
There's actually quite a lot to think about there. Quite a lot of responsibility on a practitioner or a facilitator or an educator or a ranger. So they've got quite a lot to think about, I think.
Yeah, I think it is breaking it down, and I think it is being confident in your delivery and in the ethos and the reasoning behind what you're doing, and sticking to that, and for want of a better word, selling it and showing it and explaining it to them and saying these are the benefits, this is why we are doing it, and getting them on side and letting them understand that and absorb it and take it in. You've got a good chance then of them fully backing, you know, no matter what will happen. It's very unlikely anything will happen at all, but in the unlikely event that it does, you are more likely to have their support and them say, you know, these things do happen, you know. So yeah, it's something to bear in mind, definitely, and something to just consider, but not get too overwhelmed by.
Yeah, absolutely. Which actually brings us quite neatly onto reflection and self-evaluation. I really like reflection, and I remember when I was doing my teacher training, I really enjoyed writing my reflective journal. So when you deliver a session, you have to come back and sort of self-evaluate. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What could I have improved on? What experiences did the students get, etc. And my students also have to self-evaluate. They've got to evaluate their session. Now, how do you, I've got 2 questions, it's twofold. The first one is, how do you embed reflection into your sessions for your children, learners, to reflect on their journey, experiences? And then when you get home, how do you self-evaluate, and what processes might you use for that?
Well, yeah, definitely. Within the group itself, when I'm encouraging children to reflect, a lot of them don't know what reflection is. And that's something I'm trying to build in at the moment with my school groups. I'm quite early on with some of the groups, even though we are where we are in the school year because of the pandemic. But it's definitely something I'm working on with my groups at the moment. And I think it's really key to getting them to stop and have that time to reflect, because I think there's a tendency when it gets to the end of the session that the teachers just want to take them in, and we all rush and we get it all in and we go, and that moment is lost.
So Freya, tell us something that you've enjoyed.
Everything.
Everything?
Except
Wow!
for
Mud. Yes. And you got very wet and muddy, didn't you? Have you got something to change into?
I have.
It's good. Well done. Let's come round the circle. Go on, Lucy.
Fighting.
Oh, I love that too. What about you, Jack? You have some spare clothes. What did you enjoy today?
Swinging.
Swinging
And finding nails.
and finding snails.
Swinging on the hammer.
Oh, very good at that.
And
Did you feel safe in the hammock? You were being very safe.
So I try and I always make sure that I've got those 10-15 minutes at the end where we can stop and the energy shifts, and we can have a minute just to listen to each other. And it is that speaking and listening time that I try and encourage with the children. For reflection for myself, a lot of the time it can be just thinking in the car on the way home, with a cup of tea when I get in, and just thinking about, you know, what went really well, what I'm feeling proud of, what I might improve, what I might change. If I'm at the same school the next day, I will make sure that I've got all my kit in place and ready and refresh things up. Made sure that I've got everything that I need, and just thinking about what could be improved. Sometimes there are improvements, sometimes sessions don't go as you want them to. You can feel a little bit flat sometimes. Those sessions do happen. Accepting and acknowledging that, really, and trying not to beat yourself up when things go wrong.
Yeah, I think I've compiled our list and I've taken some from the group as well. So I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you ever so much for joining me.
You are
this
welcome.
evening and this afternoon, because I know we've done this in 2 settings, and also just to thank you in advance for taking some recordings of your group as well, because I know you're going to do that for us over the next week. Thank you ever so much.
You're welcome.